every story has an ending that fits the story, and that's my biggest gripe, is that if the ending doesn't fit the story, it doesn't flow or it doesn't make sense, then like that's where you have these like problems. Hello again, and welcome back to the Hope You Hate It podcast. I'm Jack, and this is Josh. Thanks for tuning in. We have a wonderful show for you this week. Instead of a movie review, we're going to dive into a specific topic that has been on my mind for the past 6 hours.
Oh.
Something that's burning intently in my brain is something I really need to talk about. But first and foremost, before we do that, we're going to talk about what's on and what is coming out in theaters this week. Yeah, this week. What's out already?
I also thought you were going to talk about our sponsor.
Oh, right, yeah. Before I forget, this episode is sponsored by Jury of Wolves, if you haven't heard of it. It's a clothing company, a very awesome brand that I myself am invested heavily into. Wearing the shirt, wearing the hat, you always see it on. You can check us out, juryofwolves.com. Yeah, let's
I'm wearing the shorts, but you'll just have to take my word for it.
Yeah, for those of you listening, you're just going to have to take his word for it. This past weekend, brand new Jurassic World. I wanted to say Jurassic Park, but Jurassic World movie came out. Very exciting. Jurassic Park, fun fact for those trivia fans. I'm so old that Jurassic Park was the first rated PG-13 movie I was allowed to see in theaters. The very first one. And so here we are,
Mine was Godzilla.
Was it?
Yeah.
The one with Matthew Broderick?
Yep.
Yeah, nice. I like that movie a lot, actually. So some almost 30 years later, Jurassic World Dominion just released the third of like Chris Pratt trilogy. Since everything's trilogies now. Looks very cool. I haven't seen it yet, but I will probably this coming week at some point. That's pretty much it that came out in theaters this past weekend. Coming out soon, you have Spiderhead, which I don't know if you have seen the trailer for yet.
I have not.
It's a Chris Hemsworth movie. I think Chris Hemsworth and maybe Miles Teller, the guy that's in Top Gun. I know who he is. I think he's in that. Seems like a psychological thriller. Looks pretty interesting. That comes out on the 17th.
I'll be checking out that trailer as soon as we're done with this.
And also, I think a little later this month, you have the Black Phone, Ethan Hawke horror movie, which if you haven't seen the trailer for that, definitely check that out. It looks very, very, very Babadook-y, creepy. You
need to make me watch trailers before we do this, because I'm apparently behind.
I know. I want to give you homework. That's the whole point. So that's what's coming out. I think TV show-wise, The Boys Season 3 came out, last week. So that's something that I don't enjoy, but I know you do. I know you like The Boys a lot.
I love it. Love it.
Every time I see like little clips from it, I cringe. I can't take the characters.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Something
There's so many good ones. That's the don't get me started, because like the whole podcast will be on that. Like there's so many great things about the characters in that show.
Yeah, I just it's that's another one, and we'll talk about TV shows later in this episode. But The Boys is very much like Westworld for me. You love Westworld, and I cannot stand that show. And I know I'm polarizing any of the audience that absolutely loves these kinds of shows, and those shows particularly. But hey, regardless.
Yeah. We're going to put out a poll after this on your favorite host of the show. And I think we already know what's going to happen, because
That's fair. Hey, I'm not here for a popularity contest. So anyway, so that's what's out. That's what's playing. That's what we're interested in. I watched a couple things recently that I consider to be hidden gems that we'll talk about in another episode later this month. So for those of you looking for things to watch, that's the show to listen to, because we'll talk about all the things that we have found that tickle our fancy, that you aren't being recommended. And that's, I think, ultimately some of the best recommendations come from one's like, hey, I've watched this movie, it's really good. You probably never heard of it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
just always listening to the algorithm and stuff like that, you're gonna miss so many good things.
So many. Um, with that being said, so the thing that's been burning on my mind for the past 6 hours, and
Hit me with it.
particularly it came about from a movie that I watched today while I was editing photos and working on some video content. The ending of the movie. Okay.
Okay.
So obviously, for film lovers, movie fanatics, you know that most movies are built into 3 acts, right? You have the beginning, you have the middle, and then you have the third act or the conclusion. And this trend has crept up in the past, I don't know, probably 5-10 years, where the shocking ending is it is now become expected.
Yeah.
So filmmakers have two choices. They have, do we go with what's expected and throw in a twist, or do we just let it end with a million questions in the air, right, and not really have a resolution? I've found, and obviously because this has been pressed into my brain over the past 6 hours and I've been just thinking about it, I'm sure that I'm biased.
Okay.
And I'm only thinking of the ones that like either leave questions or just end terribly because they just have to throw in a twist for cliche twist's sake, right? And it just doesn't make sense. It just is what it is. But I want to talk about, why do you think that is? Why do you think in a story that's being portrayed over typically 3 acts, and it builds in character development and then it comes into the conclusion, why do you think there is this need for, like, it's like an anti-resolution, right? Instead of wrapping up all the questions that the movie has made you think of and all the characters are resolved, you have an ending that's like, now I have more questions, or, oh, okay, why did they have to do that?
Okay, so what I think is there are some things that when they're making them, like the idea behind everything is fantastic. Looking back at something like Lost, Lost was incredible. Like going through it, all the mystery and all this kind of stuff, and then they're trying to figure out how to end it, and it's like you've almost created this giant spider web of ways that it could end, where like maybe I would be happy if it ends one way, but you'd be happy if it ends another way, and our other friend would be happy if it ends another way, and but if it ends your way, I'm not happy. And so like they either choose to go down one path and maybe alienate half their audience because half the audience didn't want it to end that way, or they go, ooh, let's be a little bit edgy and let's end it this way and just leave a lot up to someone's imagination, so everyone can just imagine, oh, it's going to end the way that I think it's going to. Like after the credits crawl, you know, the hero's going to do this and that, and then everything's going to work out great. And but you know, we never I guess find out exactly what's going to happen, so maybe I can't be upset that my ending didn't happen and I can just pretend like it did. Like I think that they kind of just spin all these webs that they don't know how to end it correctly. Would be my only thought for why they like leaving it. Or like I said, maybe they're trying to be edgy and try something new. I don't know.
My argument, and I don't disagree with you, but my argument with that is, for TV shows, a lot of times I think that TV shows are written like with a really good pilot and like, this is the direction that we're going to go, and you have a really good season. Like if you're mentioning Lost, like I remember, so season 1 of Lost is still like one of the best seasons of any TV show of all time. It's phenomenal.
It's amazing.
And like even season 2, like, okay, season 2 is pretty good, and season 3 like had its moments, but like past season 3, it was so all over the place that it was so very obvious that they'd never expected to get that far, like in the show. And so then you're at a point where like I'm writing the show as I'm going, like I'm writing it ahead of time. Oh, we're greenlit for another season. Oh, okay, let's write a season, right? Where movies don't really, you don't have that excuse, I guess is my point. So you have you have a movie that has a script, it has a story, and things change within it as you're like recording it, and as things don't work, scenes don't work, whatever it is, and you're like, okay, well maybe we need to like do this differently. But in general, the story with a resolution, with a conclusion, is pre-written. The script is approved. This is okay. We're buying this movie. We're producing this movie for this. This is what we expect, right? So the conclusion or the resolution of a movie, or the lack thereof, is usually predetermined. Whereas a TV show, a lot of times it's not. And there's plenty of examples like that, like Game of Thrones, right? Like Game of Thrones, after season 4 or so, the writers were going off of their own agenda. They no longer had the books to go off of, so now they're just making things up as they go. Then you throw in outside factors of other contracts and different projects that they want to go work on, and it's like, okay, now all of a sudden the end of the show is not the way that it started out to be, right? So but movies, I'm one of the first movies that I can think of, I say one of the first. I mean, I've seen millions of movies. Maybe not millions, that's a lot, but I'm sure it's a lot. I'm sure there's.
We'll get you an exact number next episode.
The multitude of movies that I've watched. One of them, obviously, the very famous and distinct twist or up in the air endings is Inception, right? I know I mentioned it last episode. It was one of my favorite movies. It really just made you think and question a lot of things. Like after it, you have a lot of pondering to do. But the ending is it was very polarizing, right? Because you had half people that were watching the little top spin, right? And you're like, okay, so it's not falling. He's still dreaming. He never made it out.
Yeah.
But then there's that just a little of the wiggle, and it just a second that gives you it's gonna fall, and he's back. He made it back to his kids, and that's what it is, right? So that anti-resolution, even though it doesn't clear up the question, at the very, very least, it was I'm going to have an opinion on this. Like, you were able to have I'm going to have a definite opinion. That was just a wiggle, because, things that are spinning, they have that little, wobble. It doesn't mean they're going to fall. Or you're like, no, that wobble was there purposefully so that he made it out, right? And you have the optimists. They're like, yeah, he made it. What I don't like is movies that end purposefully in the middle of something without that even hitch of a resolution to hey, let's have a conversation about this, right? So one of another example, my biggest gripe with the production company A24, they do things specifically for the cliche sake. So instead of writing the script and being like, hey, this is going to be off the wall and it's going to be weird and it's going to be this and that, they're like, okay, so you're expecting weird, but this is going to be weird that doesn't fit the story. It's just going to be weird for weird's sake. And the movie It Comes at Night, that movie, it ended mid-scene with no resolution, no final fade out, no final oh, that's the scene. It just ended mid-scene, credit roll. Literally was in the theater to see that because it looked like a very scary movie. First of all, the previews painted it to be like a creature film. No creatures, no monsters, nothing scary. It was just like a pandemic dystopian whatever that's supposed to talk to you about fear and human whatever. And it just ends mid-scene, and everybody in the theater, there was an audible what? And that whenever that happens and the entire audience that's sitting in the theater all has that same collective what?
As a director, that would not be the reaction I would
No, absolutely not. There is no
Not saying
way.
I want people to do the stand-up and clapping at the end of the movie.
You don't want that either.
No, you don't have to do that. But if they're just like, what?
And that's my problem with it, right? You only do that just to say that oh, well, I'm going to be the indie director that does that, and you didn't see that coming. It's that doesn't make it good. That doesn't what you did for the sake of doing it doesn't make it good, right? That doesn't set you apart. Same thing. I mean, I can literally have an entire podcast about A24 and how much I hate their I hate almost every single one of their movies. But it's that anti-resolution that seems to be almost like a trope or a cliche. It can't just have, I'm not even saying it has to have a happy ending, but a definitive ending, right?
Yeah.
You have the definitive ending, or you have this like anti. I have a million questions more than when I started the movie. I feel let down. Like you feel like
Yeah.
you have that like post story depression of like, wait, I just watched this and I was ready to like celebrate the ending and the conclusion and this character and da, 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 and they just left me with more questions. They're never gonna make another one. There's no sequel.
Yeah.
It's just a standalone.
Yeah. That kind of stuff is frustrating because, like I said, I mean, I can see we're on an occasion leaving something like you said, the end of Inception, where it's like, yeah, you could have a complete discussion on
Sure.
was it real, was it not real, based on the end. So therefore, there was never a true resolution to it, but it's done in a it answers enough questions, enough questions that you can kind of fill in the blank, and then the mystery of what it leaves open is actually a fun mystery.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's
yeah.
fun to not have questions answered. I like being able to use my own imagination with things. When I watch movies, man, I get sucked in, like hook, line, and sinker. That like I fall for everything that happens in movies. When twists come, like I never see them coming. Like all that, like it just hits me out of nowhere. Like I don't know why. I dive straight in and I'm just completely ignoring everything else, and my mind's just running wild and having fun with it. That yeah, I like some mystery and not exactly knowing what's going on. So yeah, I don't know. But I don't know if just you saw one movie recently like that, or if you feel like there's been a lot recently that have kind of done this. I feel like more I've seen the since Game of Thrones and stuff like that, everyone's like, oh, we're killing the main character.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%.
That like that's the biggest thing with people now in movies.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Like I don't know.
The Game of Thrones like I don't know. It's like the Game of Thrones effect. After that happened and that became such a popular show, it popped up everywhere in movies where you're just like, oh, this movie has this character in it. It's like a big time actor, and 5 minutes into the movie, they're dead, or halfway through the movie they just get killed. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought they were the main character. Like, it became this place where like nobody was safe, and you're just like, okay, that's fine, but does it actually make sense in the story? Like that's my biggest gripe, and that's the other side of the endings, right? So like the one ending you have is the anti-ending, right? Where it's just like, we'll just leave a million questions for the sake of it because it's cool and edgy to do so. And then the other side of that is the twist ending when the twist doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's a really good twist ending? The Sixth Sense. Or,
I mean, any of M. Night Shyamalan,
or The Village.
Village, or
he has like some he has some wacky movies, right? But twist wise, right? In The Village, and in what's the other one I just said?
We said Sixth Sense and Signs.
Sixth Sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever the Sixth Sense came out, I don't know if you remember that, but like when I was too young to like see that in theaters, but like when it came out, I remember people talking about it, being like, "Oh my gosh, like he was dead the whole time." Like it wasn't the fact that he was.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, 30 years later. Sorry, I haven't seen that. But same thing with The Village, right? Like The Village, the whole time you're like, "Oh my god, like there's these crazy creatures, blah blah blah," and then you find out it's the people, and they live like in the middle of modern society, and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, that movie got way too much hate. It was
100%.
I love that movie. I think they marketed it all wrong, and that's what threw people off.
I think
that was a great twist.
I think that the twist was fantastic. I even said back then that I was like, I liked it so much for the suspense that it would have been awesome if it was a monster movie. Like if it actually was like, these creatures, crazy creatures that like kept them in this like this old school village, like that would have been awesome. However, the twist, my point is that the twist you didn't see coming, and it made sense for the story. It was just like, oh damn, like that's crazy. Like you didn't see that. When, for instance, like I don't know, I just want to say you use Scream as an example. Like I mentioned Scream last episode. The new one for a slasher movie is pretty good, but those movies, the entire time, you know that one of the main characters is the killer pretending to be like a friend or a relative, and they have
Yeah.
some twisted backstory where like they're out for revenge because the main character's mom was like bullied the other person's mom, and it's like, you know, from the beginning one of these people is the killer. It's not a real twist. It's like, this is just the trope of the movie, and this is the way it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
If the twist doesn't actually make sense, and at the end you're like, wait, what? Why did... There's no reason for XYZ to happen. You just did it because
Yeah.
you wanted to have a twist ending. Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. Oh, it's surprising. Like, again, going back to the A24 thing, just because it's wild and crazy or different doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's good. That doesn't just automatically be like, well, boom, done. It's blockbuster because we have a crazy twist ending that you're never going to see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree with you on that. Like, I mean, like I said, I generally fall for twist, any kind from all different things, but that's not necessarily saying that I like them all. It is fun to take wild rides and, you know, be looking this way and something happens that way. But yeah, I mean, if your twist is too easy to stumble across and go like, yeah, I saw this from a mile away. That one creepy dude at the beginning, like, yeah, he was acting normal, but we could tell that he was creepy the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't too surprising. Or the worst one is when they try to make it like a twist, and then the bad guy is like a character you haven't seen the entire movie, and it's like,
Wait,
okay,
who's that guy?
Like, to me, that's not fun. I like having lots of characters and kind of piecing them out and going, okay, this guy seems sketchy and that guy seems sketchy, and then doing like, well, this guy, he seems sketchy, but I think they want me to think that he's sketchy.
Sure.
And it's this guy that's a little bit too goody two shoes over on this side. And, you know, like, playing that little game with it is fun. And so, like, when they throw in and go like, and here's the bad guy, and you're like, where has he been the whole time? And you're like, oh, he just showed up right now in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's that kind of stuff is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though, because so one of the movies I mentioned last time, I think no, it's a hidden gem. I will save that. I have one that's a hidden gem that has a twist, and we'll talk about that
Yummy.
next time. I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting when, I think, to do a twist ending, I think, and this is the most important part, to do a good twist ending, it has to be, but again, it's just like the other, it has to make sense, it has to be believable, right? So like, it's not a great movie, but it's entertaining. The horror movie You're Next. Do you remember that?
Nope.
Okay.
I haven't seen that one yet.
So spoiler alert, it's not really a hidden gem. It's been out for a long time. So You're Next it was advertised as a, you know, slasher film, whatever.
Yeah.
Families, you know, alone, remote like cabin, families very wealthy, whatever, and they have all the siblings there for a holiday, and all the siblings, significant others, etc., and they start being terrorized by these people outside wearing animal masks. Like, one has a bunny mask, one has a wolf mask, one has a sheep mask.
Okay.
It was marketed very, like, again,
Sounds familiar, but
yeah. I mean, I'm sure if you like saw the marketing materials for it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember when that came out. But so anyways, it's like the first half of the movie, you're like, dang, like this is crazy, it's super creepy. Like, they're at dinner, and like the action gets kicked off by like one of the significant others getting like crossbowed through the window. Like, a crossbow comes through the window, just pegs him in the head and just takes him out, right? And then all of a sudden, like, all hell breaks loose. But the twist is, two of the brothers, like, there's like 5 siblings, I guess, or kids. 2 of the brothers were like in cahoots to kill off the parents and their other siblings to get like their inheritance and then split it. And so they had hired these goons, and then they were like working with them or whatever. So like, you like, it's not something that you're just like, oh yeah, it's 100% definitely the kids trying to kill their, you know what I mean? Like, you don't see it coming. And so whenever it actually is revealed towards the end, and one of the significant others is like fighting back and doing the whole thing, and she ends up like remember if she. It doesn't matter if she lives or whatever. I can't remember. But anyways, the point is like it's a twist that ends up making sense for the story, and you don't see it coming, so it works.
Yeah.
If the whole time one of the siblings is like under the table texting and like acting shady, and you're just like, okay, this person is like super. Why is that one person super sketchy the whole time?
Yeah.
And like maybe after you watch it the first time, you like watch it back, you can pick up on little things, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, he is showing a little bit of signs of maybe he's involved. But the first watch through, you're just like, oh, damn, like it's crazy. There's people outside.
Yeah.
Like, who are these people? And they make it not obvious. I think that's where it separates okay, that's a twist that deserves to be in the end. Otherwise, just do the movie, don't have a twist, make it super obvious. Because a lot of times, think about, and I know that like a lot of twists come in horror movies most of the time. I mean, in action movies, like spy movies, a lot of times it's like, oh, that person was a secret agent. They were working for the enemy the whole time, like blah, blah, blah. But when I think of twists or like surprise endings, a lot of times it's horror. Horror tends to have a lot of those, right? But when I think of the scariest horror movies, it's when the evil or the villain is known from the get-go. Like, you know who it is. They're relentless in pursuing they are incredibly scary, powerful, demonic, whatever it is, right? And and from the get-go, like, you know what they are, what they can do, or maybe you don't really know their extent of their power, but like it's an ever like pressing force that you're just like, oh my gosh, like how are they going to survive?
Yeah. I mean, I do like with those kind of things to be able to have like I guess it would be like that little bit of a twist where you kind of figure out more the origin of, like, let's say it's a creature or something like that, and find that either someone did something to unlock it, or the reason it's going after them is because of this thing. Like, finding out those little things is great, because it's a little twist that it's not one that just completely destroys or changes the whole storyline, but kind of makes you go, ooh, that was cool. Like, having little things like that can be great.
Yeah, but you get to face it head on, and it doesn't come out of nowhere, so it doesn't feel pushed or rushed or forced, right? Like, for instance, whether or not, you know, in the light of modern cinematography and like cheesiness, Jaws is one of the best horror movies of all time, right? And it's, I mean, looking back on it, you're like, oh, well, how could that have been scary? At the time,
it made millions and millions of people terrified to go in the ocean.
Yeah.
Like,
and then think about
you walk in the water and you're constantly like, looking around from that movie.
Yeah.
Like,
and it was a giant animatronic shark that they had in like swimming pools and tanks and like filming it. But it was a presence that you knew going into, I mean, obviously the movie's name was Jaws, but you knew the whole time, okay, it's a singular shark that's just it's just bent on killing. Yeah. Right? And it was scary and it was horrifying, and you just knew that like it was just presence that was just a force that just kept coming after them for 4 movies long.
Yeah.
It and its siblings and his daughter and his kids just kept coming after the family. But that's my point, though, is that it feels more believable when it's something that is set out, it's built up properly, and then it is well executed, instead of just being like, we have this slasher movie and this person's been killing eeny meeny miny, it's you because you're mad that your roommate didn't do the dishes. Like, what?
Legitimate reason.
Yeah, like
I feel you.
I don't know.
But so if we're talking about endings, though, I think we need to go back to this main character dying thing, and I mean, because it seems to be happening so often, you know, in things like, is this the way that most movies are going to go now? Is it reasonable to kill off the main characters all the time? Like, does that need to be done? Like, do you prefer to see that kind of thing happen? Do you like the main hero getting out of it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Again, I want it I just want it to make sense, right? If it's the main character and the main character is killed off for the sake of the story so that a secondary character can become the main character, become the main protagonist, then okay, then it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever it doesn't seem to make sense for the story, like why did you make this person a main character in the first place?
Yeah.
Just to then have us switch gears. Again, it feels more like, okay, we're going to force it so that we can have a cliche, our main character gets killed and the rest of the cast has to figure out a way to pick up the slack. Like,
Yeah.
okay, then that person was never the main character. And so it just feels propagated to the point of, well, you just made us think that they were the main character, but they're not really, because this other person has to now do the heroic act or carry the story, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the time, depending on what kind of movie it is, like I want to watch it for the entertainment value of not necessarily a feel good, but like when you're watching Iron Man, right? You're watching Iron Man because you want to see him flying around, making sarcastic comments, beating bad guys, doing cool tech stuff, right? If you're just like Iron Man and you go to see the Iron Man movie and 5 minutes in they're like, by the way, Iron Man gets crushed by, evil Thor, and Pepper Potts is now going to be Iron Man for the rest of the movie. You're going to be like, what?
Yeah.
That's not what this movie's supposed to be. That's not what we signed up for. It's not a Iron Woman movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like that the killing off of a main character should be used a whole lot less than what it is, and only done when it's done. Like, I think the best example, at least that I could think of currently, is The Departed. The Departed, you're following, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is having to go undercover in the mob. So every scene that he's in, you're terrified. Like, you're just on the edge of your seat. You're sweating because you're like, oh God, they're going to find out that he's an undercover agent, because the whole movie's about them trying to find the undercover agent and he's just barely skirting by. So you're on edge the whole time. And then the elevator scene happens. Boom, he's gone. My head was spinning when that happened.
Yeah, you're like, what? Okay.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But Scorsese made it work.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of the movie ended in a kind of way that it was like you were okay with it. I mean, it hit like a Mack truck, but it worked well, and I could live with the fact that they were dying.
Well, but he resolved it well, though, right? Because he also killed Matt Damon's character.
Exactly.
And I don't think it would have been as well received if the good character died and the bad
guy gets away.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it has to be done well. So, like, I guess so. One of the movies that I saw recently, and we'll go ahead and say spoiler alert on this one, was with Ambulance.
Oh, sure.
So, like, in that, you could tell, I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, you could already tell, I mean, he was kind of the bad guy. He was kind of running things. And the other guy was, like, pure of heart, and he was just doing this, to help his family and stuff. Yeah. And so you could definitely argue that Jake Gyllenhaal's character wasn't a main character, even though
he was a main character.
He's a main character. Yeah. But he was the main bad guy, I guess, in the same car with the main good guy. You could maybe, I don't know. It like the lines were very skewed. And so you could tell the whole time where the movie was going.
Sure.
That it was like, there's no way they're getting out of this.
Right.
They have to get caught. So in the event that they get caught, what's going to happen?
Right.
Gunfire, they both get shot. Like, I wasn't sure if the whoever the other guy was with Jake Gyllenhaal, I do not remember his name. I feel bad because he actually was pretty good in the movie.
Yeah.
But they both get shot. Gyllenhaal's character dies.
That's the guy from the new Candyman movie. I can't remember his name.
Okay. But and then the other guy, it made it look like he was going to die, and they were able to save him. And it was just like, to me, it was like, I I sometimes think the best ending would be to kind of have something fun for the bad guys. To have Jake Gyllenhaal, like,
Somehow
the other guy
escape.
gets shot and he somehow escapes and he's got millions of bucks and he's partying it out on an island. Like, I feel like if you're gonna kind of have a if you want to kind of have a fun, weird twist ending, like, try thinking outside the box. Do something new. People for years didn't have the main character die because they thought that we didn't want to see it. And then
Yeah.
when Game of Thrones did it, they were like, "Oh, people actually are okay with this. Let's all do it."
Yeah.
And it's like, and so like now it's like the bad guy can never win. They can never get away at the end with all the money. It's like, yeah, it could have been done in a way where Gyllenhaal escapes and he goes off somewhere with his tons of money and he ends up getting some money to the other guy and they don't go like there could have been different ways to
Sure.
go about it, but they were just like, no, he's bad and we're gonna kill him off at the end and it's gonna be like a main character is dying kind of
Yeah, I
thing.
mean,
It was felt so weak.
so again, that's one of those things where like the whole thing is it feels very pigeonholed because
Yes.
the whole time they're in the ambulance, they're being chased, they know who they are, they know them by name.
Yeah.
Like they know exactly both of the people, like they know their rap sheets, their history, like their fathers, like they know everything about them, right? So you're like, okay, there's no way
Yeah, even
that
the FBI guy or whatever was like, "Oh yeah, I would in classmates with this guy." Like
yeah.
they knew them very well.
Yeah, so you knew that the good guy, quote unquote, was never going to get the money back to his. Like as soon as they were busted and caught and like being chased, you're like, all right, so they're never getting the money to his wife in the way that he wants. Like he's not just going to go home at the end of this and be like, all right, everything's good. So you knew
Yeah.
that it was very pigeonholed towards Jake Gyllenhaal's character at least dying, if
Hmm.
not both of them passing away, right? And I almost feel like at least with that there is no twist. So like you know that that's what's coming.
Yeah.
And then it's like you're just like, all right, it's the eventuality of it. But
Yeah.
to kind of counter what you're saying about the bad guys not winning, I think that because it's almost like a domino effect because the trend of main characters
Hmm.
dying in movies, bad guys, quote unquote, do win or have a resolution more often now in things. I just watched a movie, and again, I'm not going to spoil it
Hmm.
because it is one of the hidden gems that I'll talk about later. But that movie actually, every one of the main characters dies in it.
Hmm.
So by the end of the movie, you're just like, it's a little unsettling because
Yeah.
the bad guy, not only does every main character die, but the bad guy doesn't get caught,
Hmm.
gets away with what he did, and then the movie ends with him doing it again. Like you see it and
Hmm.
like do the thing again. So it's like again, that's not really it's a twist in the fact that like you do expect the bad guy to lose and
Oh
one
yeah,
main
that
character
sounds
to
good. I mean, sounds out of the ordinary for
right.
sure.
So but again in that case, like it was a twist because like you expect something else, but it made sense. It didn't like
Hmm.
it didn't not make sense for the story because
Yeah.
just the way that it all played out, you're like, yeah, there's no way that these people should live. Like
Yeah.
somebody just randomly gains taekwondo and like martial arts skills and like can beat this bad guy and live. Like no, these are
Yeah. I
normal
mean,
people.
plot armor can be used in certain movies. Like if you got an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Commando or something like that. Give that dude plot armor and just have him mow down giant armies of people.
Yeah,
I am perfectly okay with
sure.
that. But if it's, a
Joe
different
Schmo.
kind, yeah, it's like, why does he need plot armor? Like, what are you doing with this person? Like, make them actually capable of surviving, or if they make bad decisions, then yeah, kill them off. Like,
Yeah.
but make, like I said, make it make sense, but it's, I don't know. I don't want to go too hard on the make it make sense thing because I don't like it when they dumb it down for people.
Yeah, you don't want it to
Like,
be so predictable that it's like this is so boring. I know exactly what's going to happen every
yeah,
2 seconds. Sure.
like I love when I watch a movie a second time and I pick up on things I didn't see the first time. And if I would have noticed those things the first time, I could have actually pieced together the puzzle to figure out the ending.
Hmm.
But when you have a movie that it's like someone sits something down on the table and then it zooms in on that item, like it'd be so much cooler to not zoom in on that item and then the other guy picks it up and moves on and it's a key to something that he uses later.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, that dude gave him the key. Like that was crazy. If we would have
Yeah.
been paying attention, we would have seen that earlier.
Sure,
But
sure.
like there's too many times they zoom in on that key
It's like,
and then when he's using it later, it's like, yeah, we know where you got it from, so it's not as fun. I like rewatch. I like when I watch a movie 4 or 5 times and I'm still finding new things.
yeah.
That is something I love, that attention to detail. So it's not that I need them to dumb it down for me. It just there's certain, I guess, rules in the universe that like stay within these kind of guidelines, and I don't know, maybe I'm just picky with certain things.
See, I agree with you. I think it's not just like make it make sense for me. I think it's more of a, again, I don't know that it's like make it make sense. I just don't like when when a writer or a producer, director, whatever, does like makes a decision for the story or the direction, the acting direction, and decides on a plot line for the sake of itself. Like,
Yeah.
Give you an example, and this is actually what made me want to talk about this topic. So,
Nice. Hit me with it.
all right. So, and this is spoilers for anybody that hasn't seen the Netflix show Elves that came out last year. It was 2021. I think it's originally in Dutch, maybe something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
It's not English.
But you can watch it with English. You can watch it with English audio.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't do that.
so
Do
it's
subtitles.
So it's it's not really a holiday. It takes place over Christmas. His family goes to a remote island, and there's like a fenced off area on the island that has like electric fence, and the like native people that live there are like super standoffish and weird and don't go near the island, take the other road, and blah 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 blah. Anyways, long story short, there's these elf creatures, right? And they're not traditional like Santa elves. They're like these underground demon creatures that like they look. I'm trying to think what they look like. They look like evolved Pokemon. Like it's like the one girl like finds a little baby one and it's like pretty cute, but then like the like fully grown ones have like these crazy arms and fangs and it's whatever. But anyways, so the whole thing is like the girl finds a baby, rescues it, and then like
Just finds a baby?
well, like it had
Or is this not important? We don't have to go into it.
it had gotten out of the preserve or whatever somehow, and like she
So the baby ran away. Like, how big of a baby are we talking? I don't
it's
know
a
why
baby
I'm
elf.
stuck on this.
One of the
baby elf.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the baby elves, and
it's like
it's a little creature.
I mean, like, are you talking toddler? Or are you talking
Yeah.
like I'm
It's-
picturing like a baby.
yeah, baby, like
and then,
it's
like-
like toddler size.
Okay,
Yeah, like a toddler size.
this is
But
a
it's
small
like,
child. It's not a baby.
but it's a baby anyways. Regardless, so the daughter is like taking care of it and trying to nurse it back to health, and long story short, like the visiting people end up arguing with the townspeople, and the daughter goes missing, and she ends up inside the pen, and townspeople are like keeping these elves back by like sacrificing cows to them every couple weeks. They like only eat meat. Anyways, it was the ending that pissed me off because it was entertaining. It was well shot. It was a little on the nose, like you knew things that were going to happen before they would happen. But anyways,
Yeah.
they managed to like get the baby back in with them, and the main characters escape, and blah 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 blah. They get the electric fence back up, and they're traveling back to the mainland, right? And the little girl is so brokenhearted, right? She's brokenhearted. She's like, I abandoned that baby. Like I told him that I would always take care of him, and blah blah blah. And they're like, it's okay. And then they're sailing off into the sunset, and the last scene of the miniseries is they like pan underneath the car because they're sitting on one of those like car barges, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
underneath the car, the baby thing just like pops down from underneath. It's hanging onto the car, And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, really? Okay, so we couldn't just leave it. Like, why? So now this
Yeah.
baby elf creature thing is not only on its own, which that was the whole point of the whole debacle in the first place, that it couldn't take care of itself, and she had to return it to the bigger ones because the bigger ones were mad and they were trying to get out, and like, they just wanted the kid back and they wanted to eat all the island people. But now it somehow, and like the way that it had, like, it didn't make sense that it somehow ended outside of the electric fence again, and like
Yeah.
attached to their car, and they never noticed, and then like they left, and it was like, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, you, that last shot of the miniseries ruined it for me. Like, it ruined the whole thing because I'm like, okay, that was it was a pretty interesting, like, it's not done before, whatever.
Yeah.
It's an interesting show, interesting movie, and then they just have to throw in a one final, like, haha, it's still
Yeah.
there, like, and the girl's gonna find it, and who knows what's gonna happen. They're not going to make another one because it'd be pointless to make it. There's no content there to make like a second part to it.
Yeah.
But like, it had a maybe not happy resolution, but like the whole family didn't die. None of there was a girl and a brother and a mom and a dad. None of them died.
Mm-hmm.
The girl was sad that she had to like leave the baby behind, but like they had almost gotten all eaten. So like,
Yeah.
be happy with being alive and just like leave the place. Like, you're on vacation. You don't even live there. So you're just leaving, and she's like, I'm just so sad I had to abandon him. And then it's like, just kidding. It's still here.
But he's there. Yeah.
Gosh.
I know. It's sometimes it's almost like a catch-22 though, because it's like, if it is just a perfectly happy ending, it's almost like in the time that they've been making movies, we've been force-fed perfectly happy endings so many times that, I mean, I think you could have people have a perfectly happy ending and they're like, this is bullshit. Like,
Yeah, but with that being said, though, it's like that ending. If you so say you're those writers, you're like, all right, this is a horror show. Like, people got eaten.
Mm-hmm.
It was dramatic. It was suspenseful, and so we don't want to end on like this sailing off into the sunset. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
fine. So why not cut back to the fence and show like one of the adults like pushing open like part of the electric fence, or like a part that's like broken or like doesn't have power,
Mm-hmm.
like, if that's the way you want to leave it, to like say, oh well, something else is going to happen, make it
Mm-hmm.
as creepy as the rest of the show. Make it as dark and be like, oh well, the island people they're done, they're toast, because those things are going to get out and kill everybody.
Or it'd be kind of cool to show that the baby one learned something from the humans because of being with it so long, that
They're out there
gave
driving
them
cars.
extra, well, just gave them extra information to be able to expand and that kind of thing. Like that's more the kind of along the lines of what I would find more interesting with it. But who am I? I don't
who are you?
write direct movies.
Yeah. Anyways, that was what sparked this entire debate, because it was just like, dude, what? Why?
Yeah.
It's just that last shot, that last final moment of the series. I'm like, no, it's. I don't know who in the directing and then post production was like, that's it. That's the way we're ending this show. Like, come on. And I don't know. What's my opinion, right?
Yeah. Well, so going through, we've talked about different types of movie endings and stuff like that. Mr. Director Jack, what would be, how would you end the movie? Would you like would you like to leave it kind of open-ended, so hopefully someone comes along later and does a sequel? Would you like to have a perfect tied up resolution that it's one movie start to finish, bang bang, like it's done? Like a movie like A Few Good Men. Like, yes, that's real life. It could continue on because there's not, like, those people still kept living, things kept happening.
Yeah.
But you don't need a movie because this was the interesting part of that person.
Yeah.
That was the interesting part, or like, so what would you do?
So I think that the easy and right answer is that every story has an ending that fits the story, and that's my biggest gripe. is that if the ending doesn't fit the story, it doesn't flow or it doesn't make sense, then like that's where you have these like problems. I'm all for discussion, obviously. Like we have a movie podcast. We want to talk about movies. I am more prone to writing stories that have question endings. Like it leaves you at the end and being like, wow, I want to like what's going to happen, what like whatever, right? Like you want to talk about, but it's more of the Inception ending of like there is something definitive at the end that you can talk about, or that you can assume, right? That you can make an assumption based on that final scene of like, dang, even if it's bad, like it's an impending doom, like you know that like, boom, at the end of I know that they cut to the clip of Princess Leia getting the plans to the Death Star at the end of Rogue One, but the end of Rogue One, like whenever the planet goes to explode and both of them are there and you know that they're gonna die, like that, like boom, there's the conclusion. Like you can just be like, you see it coming and they're both gonna get killed, right? You don't have to see something firsthand to know that it's gonna happen, and for it to not like for it to be a bad or an ending that needs a different resolution. So I think that's the answer. It has to just make sense. If I'm making a Western, you don't need a twist. You don't need an open-ended ending. Like it can be this is the story. This is a story about a man who defended a widow and her kids on a ranch from cowboys that were trying to take her land and kill her, right? And it can be just an action story about this guy doing the right thing, and maybe he lives, maybe he dies at the end, but she gets to save her ranch and her kids fine, right? Like, or whatever, however you want to do it. But that story doesn't need did she live, did she die? Because it's like, then what was the point of the story? Like, why did we tell the story then if we don't know if she lived or died, or if she did get to keep her ranch or not? Like, you know what I mean? So that makes sense to have a definite conclusion. This is how it ends, right? But in a mystery thriller or a horror movie or something where this whole story is just kind of like up in the air and you're not really sure, leave it on a cliffhanger of, wow,
killer's still out there.
Right. Like,
they may escape. You thought you had them, but they're gonna escape, or whatever.
And I think that sometimes it's done too many times with like when there's a definitive killer, like Michael Myers, right? Like the Halloween movies. It's a very definitive, you know who the bad guy is, you know he's coming at you the whole time, but every single time there's something that brings him back. Right? And so it's like, you know it's coming, you expect it, there it is, he's still alive at the end. Big whoop. It would be more surprising if they just like cut his head off and you're like, whoa, that's it.
They
cut his head off and they ground him up in a like in a grinder.
Wouldn't matter, he'd be back the next one.
But no, to answer your question, I think that it's not so much like I would choose one or the other. I think that for whatever story you're writing, it more like you said, it has to make sense.
No, that was the perfect answer, because that was actually a trick question. That there's not one ending for every freaking story. Right. And I feel like so many movies are like, we have two endings we can do. That's it. It's either happily ever after
or everybody dies.
Everybody dies. Like, we don't know what else to do. We're out of ideas. But no, I completely agree with you that I'd like to see some new stuff come along that changes how people view movies, like what Game of Thrones did. Like, I mean, we can see a pinpoint in time when they started doing that stuff to then like all the time in movies you're like the hero is dying or the main character. I mean, even when you knew that kind of stuff was going to be happening because of their lifestyle, and it would only make sense for them to, like any of that kind of stuff. But it was like that, I feel like, really changed movies forever. And I'd like to see that next thing come along that really hits differently, that you see an ending, you're like, that was weird. Like, I hadn't seen something like that before. Like, I want that. I want that in my life.
Unfortunately, that was long enough that we've actually had, when I give so much hate to A24. I think I maybe like one or two of their production movies, but the A24 kind of had their own. It's that their own like effect on movies, indie movies, and horror movies. That there's just they started this again. It's a trend of. It's the story is played out and almost like as a parody of itself, and then like the things that they show you and put into the story are so abstract that like they don't actually fit with the story. They're just abstract for the sake of being abstract. Like it's like that interaction with somebody where you're like, is this your real personality, or you're just like, do you actually act like this whenever nobody's around, or is like this has to be this is a farce, right? Like you're putting on a mask. And it feels like that too. And it's so funny because the people that defend that kind of stuff is like, you just don't understand. It's too deep. You just don't understand that kind of art. No. Yeah. Again, just because it's written that way doesn't make it deep. It doesn't make it good, right? It doesn't mean because I wrote it and it's a twist and it's weird and it's off the wall. It doesn't mean that's like that's not quality. That doesn't equal. One does not equal the other. It can, right? You can write something that's off the wall and that's weird, and it can be good, but it doesn't equal good.
Yeah, and maybe it can for some people, and if it is for you, then you should stop watching us because it drives us freaking crazy.
And that's fine too, right? Like everybody's entitled to their own opinion, which is fine. Like you can like every one of A24's movie, and you can sit there and go, you don't like it because it's too deep for you. You know what? That's fine. You're entitled to that opinion, and that very well could be. Maybe it's too deep for me.
Yeah,
but
maybe it is.
It's that same trend, right? And we see that played out into other studios now. That it's just like we're gonna make this. It's gonna be crazy and off the wall, and it's gonna be good because it's off the wall. I don't know. Anyways,
I digress.
We were gonna tumble down the rabbit hole into TV shows. But I think we'll save that for another time.
Yeah. Maybe.
What I would like is if you are watching, you have made it all the way to the end. Get it? The ending. See, we were talking about endings, and now it's the end. Not only would I like to say thank you for sticking around and listening. If you haven't, there's a subscribe button if you're watching. There's a follow button if you're listening. That's really the best you could do for us. Leave a comment.
Like and describe it.
That's right. Like and describe. If you leave a comment, you leave a heart or a thumbs down, whatever, up or down, it's still feedback. But what I'd really like is I would like other people's opinions on endings. Do you prefer a resolution or the anti-resolution? Do you like twists?
I'd like to know,
like the definitive?
Yeah, and to see some of other people's favorite movie endings, because like I'm going through them all in my head, going like, which are some of the best ones? Which are some of the best? And like it's so hard to think, especially when we're doing the podcast, to really like branch out and go, all right, let's go through the millions of movies that we've seen and try thinking of like some of the best ones. And it's so I want to see what someone thinks, because it'll probably pop out. I'll go, I had totally forgotten about that movie. That was a freaking awesome ending. Like, so I'd like to see some of that stuff.
Post or comment or send us your favorite endings, what kind of endings you like. That would be cool. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube or you listen to us on Spotify, either way, thank you very much. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Hope You Hate It Pod. U with a letter U and not YOU. It should be like all over the place, links and things on the screen. But anyways, from the Hope You Hate It podcast, thanks for watching.